everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Geeking Out podcast. I am the Athletic Geek, and we have another edition of the Rushmore of Wrestling, and very excited about this one. This is going to be a very interesting topic for us this week because this week we are going to do the Mount Rushmore of TNA/Impact superstars. And joining me on my esteemed panel for this edition is Jedi Jason Kruger, my co-host, now sporadic co-host because the man's got kids and doesn't always have time to do the live stream, but he will always be part of the Athletic Geek family, and going to be lending his opinion and expertise to this because, a lot of road trips Jedi and I had whenever we first really started hanging out with one another was going to Impact or TNA house shows in St. Charles, Poplar Bluff, etc. So be really cool. We at one point in time we really sang from the mountaintops and really waved that TNA banner, and for better or worse, but that was us. And then also joining us again is Caleb Carter from Four Sides Podcast, lending his expertise, and glad to have him back working with us again. This is really great to get him involved. Appreciate you coming back, man.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I've always been a bigger fan of TNA's been one of my guilty pleasures for so long. So it's awesome to be able to. Yeah, no pun intended.
Out of context.
Okay, we'll try to keep this friendly or family.
But at one point in time, it wasn't a guilty pleasure. It was honestly, at least in terms of the in-ring product, the best wrestling one could ask for, at least in the United States. And then, for whatever reason, that's another debate for another show. But we're talking Mount Rushmore here. We're talking about the men and women that we think are the top four of the best, represent a promotion that, had its ups, had its downs, had its good times, its bad, was unquestionably the best promotion in the United States to a laughingstock. But the one thing you got to give to TNA/Impact is it has endured. Anytime that you think that promotion is done, it's like a cockroach. It keeps coming back. And, at the time of this recording, they're working with AEW. And possibly New Japan again, so who knows? But let's get right to the discussion. We are going to start with Jedi. Jedi, who is number one on your Mount Rushmore of TNA wrestling, TNA/Impact Wrestling?
Okay, so I will preface this with I really only watched from 2005 when they got on Spike TV till about the end of 2008, right before Hogan and Bischoff showed up, and then got married and other things happened and kind of fell off the rails on all that. But so that's where I'm coming from. I can't comment much on, like, say, Johnny Impact or people like that because I just didn't see it. Hearing about it third hand doesn't do it for me. So keeping that in mind, I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag and say what we're probably all already thinking.
We may not. We'll build up to that. I want some suspense.
I
want some people to think.
Should I hold that one off? Should I hold off?
Well, don't hold it off, but let's not all say it if we all have it, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, I see. Fair enough. All right. Well, anyway, I will throw out the name that always comes to mind the instant I think of TNA is AJ Styles.
Yeah.
Yep.
So why do you feel that AJ Styles is worthy of your Mount Rushmore?
So, for one thing, from the get-go, I could tell that he was, you had the whole X division, which was a breath of fresh air because at that point the cruiserweights were basically forgotten about over in WWE. And, the X division was just something new and fresh for me. And then I saw AJ Styles, and then even just seeing footage from back before that, before Spike TV, and then later, him being able to mix it up in every division, just just the whole thing. He constantly delivered. You never really had a bad match. I mean, he had that charisma. It seemed like he represented what TNA was then, which was an alternative to what we had, which was the land of the giants at the time,
Mm-hmm.
as far as U.S. wrestling on TV. So, and I mean, yeah, I mean, consistently throughout the whole time I watched, it's like, I mean, if AJ Styles wasn't on there, was it really TNA Impact,
Right. Okay. Well, AJ Styles is number one. What is number two?
So for number two, I debated on this back and forth whether I was going to include him because I kind of wanted to stick with the, if you will, homegrown, more TNA, not associated with other companies. But I kept on, and finally I was like, you know what? No, like, I mean, he's one of the names that comes to mind, though. He spent so much time there, even though he was in the other company. I've got to go with Kurt Angle.
Okay, so why
Yep.
do you want Kurt Angle on your Mount Rushmore of TNA?
So even though technically he made his name elsewhere, when he got there, I mean, it just from the get go, he was what put Impact on the map once they were on Spike TV. Like really got them going and got them maybe a little too cocky in the end, but he was the big name that really, brought the people to the arenas. And I mean, his work rate, whilst, now we know he was killing himself, his work rate was, I mean, second to none. I mean, the guy was always great when we met him. Always had time for the fans, even though he was, minus maybe Sting, the biggest name in the company.
Right. And obviously in a
And
lot of pain every time we met him at those
yeah,
shows.
yeah, yeah. But it's just, I mean, I don't know where they would have been without him, to be honest. I mean, it's crazy to think he literally spent more time there than he ever did in WWE as far
Right.
as years wrestling. And it's like, I mean, I could think of quite a few matches where it's like just him being involved was exciting. I mean, he had that intensity down. He could be funny when he wanted to, but when he got serious, it was like, I mean, no one didn't take him seriously when he got serious.
Right.
you know? So, yeah, I couldn't leave him off. He was, AJ Styles to me is like the embodiment of it, but Kurt Angle was like, I mean, right there with him. He's the one that brought TNA to the dance, basically, after it got there. He brought it to the next level,
Okay.
I guess I would say.
All right. So who would be your third choice?
So, for number three, I had to debate for a while uh, because first I was thinking about names like Eric Young came to mind because he was supportive of the company, and then I also thought of Abyss because he was basically the hardcore, like, I mean, he did, yeah, basically like what Mox is to AEW or maybe Joey Janela and what Mankind was back in the day for WWE. But I mean, I tried to do this based off when I think of the company, like what names and image faces immediately come to mind, and it had to be Samoa Joe,
Okay.
which I know after he fought with Kurt Angle for a while creatively things kind of went off the rails, but the intensity that he brought and the style and just everything from starting with him just murdering his way through the X division to later on then squaring off with Kurt Angle in these epic bouts. And I mean, yeah, Samoa Joe was my guy for a while. I was
Oh yeah, I
hardcore
remember
mark
those
for.
days. I think you were the. I think to kind of go, go a little off the rails. Jedi and I went to the TNA Lockdown Fan Fest. They had
Mm-hmm.
2007 when Lockdown was in St. Charles, Missouri.
St. Louis. Yep.
St. Louis, St. Charles. What?
Yeah, it was
There,
St. Charles technically. Yeah,
St. Charles
right.
technically, but yeah. The meet and greet was in St. Louis though. And I remember now
Mm-hmm.
this is not a slide on Samoa Joe at all, but I remember of all of us who were there for Sting,
Mm-hmm.
Kurt Angle,
Yep.
Kevin Nash, the Dudley Boys, VKM, aka the New Age Outlaws at the time.
Mhm.
You know, everybody who was kind of there for all that. Jedi, his first line he was in was Samoa Joe's. And I think he
Yep.
may have been the only guy out of the four of us, four or five of us, five of
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
five of us
5, I think.
collectively that
Yeah.
went. You
Yeah.
were the only one that I believe met Joe, and I know like I wasn't a slight on Joe. It was just so Joe had a long line. I'm kind of like, at the time, like,
Yeah.
I want to hit all these others and not get Joe, and then but to translate, again, much later, uh, I started getting more into Joe after that show, and
Hmm.
there was just literally a pay per view, a WWE pay per view watch party in somewhere in the St. Louis area,
Yeah. Some
and
random sports bar.
some Ram Sports Bar. Samoa Joe was there, and I had to beg Jedi, who at the time his was it girlfriend or fiance at the time? It wasn't
Oh, it
wife.
might have been fiance or wife by
It
then.
wasn't wife. I know it wasn't wife.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, because she was in from
Yeah,
California
probably
still at the
still.
time.
Oh, still girlfriend then, probably.
Yeah. Um, I had to beg and pay for both of their meals and the gas just to go there because I'm like, please, I want to meet Samoa Joe. So, I mean, I definitely understand why you would include him as your number 3, and if there's anything else you'd like to add to Joe, but off of that
Right.
tangent, go right
I
ahead.
mean, yeah, I nothing really off the top of my head. Just, I mean, that was definitely the definitive run. I mean, I'd like to say that his WWE run was, at least on the main roster, was something, but unfortunately, it just never really quite manifested. I'm sure the age doesn't help, though. And Prime Samoa Joe was TNA Samoa Joe, and probably Ring of Honor, but I still mostly got in from TNA
Okay.
in the mid 2000s. So.
Okay. Well, that is number 3. Who is the last face on your Mount Rushmore?
So I was mentioning those other names, and I just about nearly went with Abyss, but then I swerved and went a different direction because one big thing that TNA did that WWE was epically failing at the time was establish a decent women's division. I mean, yes, they had Trish Stratus and stuff, but like, I mean, basically, other than maybe 3 people I could name, WWE didn't have anybody. Um, And TNA, like, I mean, it was a little rocky at first, maybe, but they definitely invested a lot more in the women at that time period. This is way before the Divas Revolution and all that. And so I thought on it, and at first I thought of Gail Kim but then after I thought about it, I thought who really solidified the women's division for me, and I had to go with Awesome Kong.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, when it came down to it, that was the big attraction, was seeing who could topple the monster. And she was just out there wrecking people. It was something different. I mean, yes, you had Beth Phoenix over in WWE, but it was not the same by any means. And
Right.
just it just that I feel like that was the first step towards, I mean, now you've had so many things happen with women over in that company, but I feel like she was the one that started that. And like I said, I can't comment on anything past 2008. So
Okay. Well, that is a very solid Mount Rushmore of TNA/Impact Wrestling, and I certainly understand, maybe not necessarily agree with every option on there. So let's transition to Caleb. Caleb, what do you have as your first face on your Mount Rushmore?
Well, I will say that Jedi and I's list is pretty similar, and I do have AJ Styles as my first,
Absolutely.
and mainly for the reasons that Jedi said, but I also kind of wanted to add that I kind of feel like AJ Styles was like the first. Like I know he did a little bit of stuff towards the end of WCW, but I feel like AJ is really the first star that TNA made, sort
Right.
of.
yeah,
And then Kurt Angle was also another one of my picks. I know he's more known for WWE, but being that I was a big fan of TNA and I kind of started watching TNA whenever he came in, I feel like a lot of his TNA work was better than some of his WWE work, wrestling wise,
Right.
and yeah, he did bring, like, me included. He brought a lot of eyes to the TNA product. When it comes to the knockouts division, I agree with what Jedi said, but being that I kind of watched TNA a little bit after 2008, and I was really invested around 2012 when they were doing the whole run with Bobby Roode and all that. I know it was a Hogan era still, but when I think of the knockouts division, I think of Gail Kim, and
Okay.
I think that's gonna be my pick, my third pick for the Mount Rushmore. And with the Impact Knockouts division, it's kind of like what WWE is doing now with their women, except it's like they didn't have to shove it in our face every 5 minutes. They just did it, you know.
Right.
Right.
So I felt like that's definitely a big strength that TNA's always had is the Knockouts division. Sorry, I'm going through these kind of
Oh no,
fast,
you're
but
fine.
So I was gonna say, if you don't mind me tacking on real quick, I mean, I definitely can't disagree with Gail Kim. She was the driving force behind pushing for having a women's division
Right.
behind the scenes. So
yeah. Um,
definitely,
my last pick was actually somebody you were going to go with, Jedi. I actually decided to go with Abyss
yeah,
because he was kind of the big hardcore guy in TNA, and he was like behind the Monsters Ball gimmick. And I mean, he has a match named after him, and just overall his loyalty to the company, like when you think about Abyss, like the majority of his work was with TNA, and
oh yeah,
I'll recall back to an instance where he was actually offered to go to WWE to have a WrestleMania match with Undertaker, and he turned that down to stay with TNA because he liked the direction of TNA, which that's kind of up in the air, honestly. But I mean,
Right.
you got you got to commend him for his loyalty to the company. I mean,
yeah,
another one of those guys, Sting. I was going to include him, but I kind of associate him more with WCW.
hmm
But he was also another one of those loyal guys. I mean, he put him and Abyss probably put up with a lot of crap backstage with like creative disagreements and everything, and just to stay with the company as long as they did. I
Right.
don't know, loyalty just goes a long way for a guy like me.
Gotcha.
yes,
So yeah,
But to kind of counterpoint you a little bit, loyalty goes a long way, and that there's nothing wrong with that. But to what end does loyalty become a detriment? Because while I'm sure Abyss is, and it's kind of ironic, it just popped up on my YouTube feed earlier today. I watched his TNA or Impact Hall of Fame induction, and Abyss was owes everything to Impact, to TNA, and he's very happy with his career that he carved out for himself there. And I'm not knocking Abyss at all for doing that. But on the flip side of that, where could he have been, especially in a company that, as it's been well documented, didn't always pay their talent? When they did pay him, they didn't always pay him a living wage. You have women in the knockouts division literally working minimum wage jobs to make ends meet. I mean, not knocking the loyalty at all. I'm not doing that.
right.
But do you think to a point that could be a detriment, like we're going to stay loyal to Impact, and he could have, you know, had a great career in the WWE, had a WrestleMania match with The Undertaker, been part of the legendary streak, been WWE champion, main evented WrestleMania. Do you think that, as good as that is for Impact, is that like a bad thing in general? I guess is what I'm trying to say. Or can it be a bad thing in general for a couple of the quote unquote TNA loyalists?
Well, I mean, I'll go back to AJ Styles. He stayed. like I kind of saw that he was kind of a loyal guy too. I mean, eventually it did come to that point for him where it's like, hey, I'm gonna need more money or I'm gonna have to take my services elsewhere. I don't know. I think it just depends on how you look at wrestling. Like, do you look at it as a passion or do you look at it as a job?
Well, I mean, I definitely, yeah, I'm with you there. But eventually, there comes a time where, hey, I need to make my money,
Oh, absolutely.
and I need to
Yeah.
take that time. It's like it has nothing to do with TNA, but like right now, I am not a fan of Shinsuke Nakamura's run in the WWE at all. At least on the main roster, not a fan.
Right.
Not his best matches. Um, not the best writing. Not the best anything. But and I remember discussing with some friends up in New York City for WrestleMania weekend. They're going like, "Man, yeah, his contract's coming up. Sure hope he goes back to New Japan." And I'm like, I mean, if he does, I'm not going to complain. But I certainly don't blame Shinsuke Nakamura for not going back to New Japan and staying in WWE and going, yeah, I've wrestled the strong style of New Japan for years. I don't have very much time left to, you know, make money. Yeah, you gotta, some people, you gotta have something you're passionate about, or else it is gonna be bad. But on the flip side, like somebody like Shinsuke also deserves to really make a good amount of money that he probably, with all respect and love to New Japan, was not getting. So,
Right.
it's kind of one of those, you know, I guess the big thing is like, where do we as fans like stand? Like, how much is that? When do we become the entitled fans? Whenever we're complaining about somebody saying, "I'm going to take the money," you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Right.
Yep.
But
I guess it's like it'd have been neat if he had gone to WWE and fought the Undertaker. But on the flip side,
right,
considering at the time that he was happy where he was and
Mhm.
he felt like he was being listened to and treated well there, and considering in retrospect all of the promises that the other company has made to people and then dropped the ball on, I'm
Right.
not sure he made the wrong call. Yet
No,
still.
I don't. It's kind of it's a two-way street. I'm not saying he. I mean, especially again, referencing his Hall of Fame speech. Yeah, absolutely. But I also just kind of think that sometimes, like look at some of the people in Ring of Honor right now
Hmm.
that are loyal to Ring of Honor, and it's their detriment. How many people could be making some big money in WWE right now? Or I'm not gonna say AEW because I'm sure probably anybody from Ring of Honor wanted to walk to AEW, they would. But look at WWE. Like, there's probably so many names on the Ring of Honor roster that could have been in NXT and on the main roster and making really securing their future. But they said we're going to stay loyal to Ring of Honor. And while in 2017, 18, that's a great call. But now it's like not a great call.
Right.
um, but okay, we have Caleb. So now it's time for mine. And well, the first couple names on here are going to sound very redundant. Uh, Obviously, the first is AJ Styles. I mean, he is TNA. Any and all interest in I had in that company as a whole uh, went away when he left the first time around. He was the embodiment. I mentioned how Jedi was in line first for Samoa Joe. Well, I was in line first for AJ Styles. That was, you know, right up there, with Sting and Kurt Angle, who I'd watched my whole Sting. I'd watched my whole life. Kurt pretty well my whole life, and right up there with the both of them at that meet and greet was AJ Styles, and that's somebody who I just had to meet. And at the time selfies weren't free. You know, you had to pay for the selfie, or they had to pay for the Polaroid. You know,
Polaroid.
my minimal money that I had, I made sure I had enough money for a Polaroid of AJ Styles, in addition to Kurt Angle and Sting. So, you know, it is just kind of he is TNA, or he was TNA. Just even to this day, when I see that company, I think of everything that AJ Styles did for it, and you know, to me, that we could do a whole podcast just on AJ Styles. You know, with how he's able to essentially embody that company, make a brand new career for himself in New Japan, get at least to the Western audience the notoriety in New Japan because of, you know, his affiliation with the Bullet Club, and that's basically what started, to me, the New Japan boom here in the States was AJ. You know, that the Bullet Club was around for a year and I'm not knocking Devitt / Balor at all, but Bullet Club was around before AJ was in it, and you didn't see a Bullet Club shirt at every comic book convention, wrestling show, or even a trip to the mall back then, you know, with when Devitt had it. But when AJ Styles joined, you saw Bullet Club shirts everywhere, not even in nerd culture sort of places. So that was AJ. And then come to now where he's, at least from 2016 to, I'd say, 2019, unquestionably the best wrestler in the WWE, at least on the main roster. You know, it speaks to just not only him being that guy for TNA is what's made AJ Styles truly a legend everywhere he has gone in the wrestling business. So definitely got to put AJ Styles on this Mount Rushmore. And then number 2 is Kurt Angle. So we do agree on a couple. We collectively agree on a couple. Kurt Angle, as everybody said, Kurt Angle put TNA on the map, and I know there's a lot of TNA loyalists that will tell you that it wasn't Kurt Angle; it was good long before he came. And they're, to an extent, they're right. It was good wrestling. It wasn't Kurt Angle that made TNA good, but it was Kurt Angle that brought the attention that all of those eyeballs, maybe who wouldn't have given TNA a second look, find like, oh, Kurt Angle's there. I guess it's got to be good. He left the WWE to go there. It must be good. Couple that with the fact with Kurt Angle, he was one of the most selfless people in TNA. And, you know, it was well documented, Kurt Angle's struggles with addiction at that period of time. As great as he was in the ring, it was probably personally one of Kurt's darkest times. Constant run-ins with the law. It really was tragic. But other than that, Kurt Angle was one of the most selfless people in TNA wrestling. He was ready, willing, and able to work with anybody. He wanted to work and put over Black Machismo. He wanted to work with Samoa Joe and put him over. He wanted to work with AJ Styles and put him over. He wanted to do all these storylines that, you know, other WWE guys would go to TNA and just be there for the paycheck. And there's nothing, again, like we just discussed, you know, sometimes there's nothing wrong with just needing a paycheck. You know, they're human beings too. But, you know, here's Kurt Angle, who's giving his all in the worst shape of his life for a company just to make it grow. So, yeah, you definitely got to put Kurt Angle on that list. My number 3 is one that I have in common with Caleb, and that is Gail Kim.
Ooh.
So, you know, just basically, she put the knockout, you know, again, she was the reason there was a women's / knockouts division in TNA. She was the driving force behind that. She was, before there was a knockouts division, there she was having women's wrestling matches in TNA. You know, one of the better on the lockdown card that we went to, you know, where there was a couple matches on that card which will just make you shake your head and laugh at what the fuck was TNA thinking. There was the blindfold match, the electrified cage match, both of them just complete jokes of a match. But then also on that same card is Jackie Moore, aka Jacqueline, and Gail Kim in a women's steel cage match, with the exception of the main event with several of the names we just mentioned in Lethal Lockdown, that was the best match on the card.
Yeah.
And I'm not
Yeah, I
saying,
mean,
and I don't mean
sometimes you gotta look past all the silly stuff and look at the good stuff.
right. I mean, that was the best match on the card. And I'm not just saying that because I'm not saying that kind of like the whole and the whole card sucked. The damn. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it was the best match on the card other than Lethal Lockdown because it was gonna kind of quote Triple H a little bit. That damn good. It was a show-stealing match, and the only thing that counts against Gail, and I say as somebody who has is she did leave. She, this kind of goes back to the loyalty. I was playing devil's advocate earlier, but she did leave for that paycheck, and what did it do? Granted, she came back, rebuilt it like she never missed a beat, but like, just imagine, again, she probably was not getting paid very well in Impact. I'm not trying to bash, but she probably was not. I can only speculate.
It's like you said, you have to think of these wrestlers as human beings also, and I mean, these wrestlers do need money.
Right. Especially in a business that, you don't really get health benefits or retirement or, paid days off. Well, you do, or, you know what I mean? Just, you don't get certain things that, at some jobs that we in the quote unquote real world have, we might have our health insurance paid for, or we might have, good sick leave or, parental leave or FMLA or retirement, pensions, 401k. Normal people might have that, and wrestlers, despite all the money they make, they don't have that. So you got to make money so you can save money, and I don't really know if Impact lent itself to that very well. I can't speak for Gail's paychecks. I'm not Gail. So I feel like that's the only thing that could count against Gail is that period of time where she left. But then she did come back. So yeah, just for everything she did for the women's division in TNA, my opinion, you gotta put Gail on the list. And also, my fourth one, and I'll admit this is not. I wasn't following Impact a lot when this was going on, but I've watched this person's segments. My fourth is Matt Hardy.
Wow.
Delightful.
Wonderful.
There was at a point in time where I remember saying this to a mutual friend of Jedi and I, JC, who's been on the channel before. I remember in 2014, 2015, somewhere around there, just kind of, we were talking wrestling, we were driving back from somewhere, talking wrestling in the car, and I just said, what's funny is we used to always think that TNA or Impact would be the new WCW, and now they've let themselves fall into being the new AWA, where it was just like they were completely irrelevant. Nobody gave a shit. I mean, there was great talent there, don't get me wrong, but from about the time AJ left till when Matt Hardy got creative, TNA was irrelevant. TNA was just something. It was where there was some young talent that needed their opportunity, but they were going to bolt as soon as they got their opportunity and they got their exposure. Or there were people that just needed a job, and here's a paycheck. And it among all of that, we have Matt Hardy, who, call this a hot take, to me is the better Hardy. I feel like he's more talented in the ring and more creative, really bringing to light, the fact that wrestling can be different. It could, it could be literally cinematic. And at a point in time where Impact is not going to be able to stand out in the slightest compared to WWE, which, at that time, WWE was stacked as far as talent. And, while maybe creatively it wasn't the best, but, I mean, you had AJ there. You had Daniel Bryan there. You had NXT. You had Finn Balor, you had Rollins, Ambrose, all the people that maybe that independent fans wanted to see, they were in WWE. And then if they wanted an alternative to that, there was Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor had the Elite at the time, had Christopher Daniels, had Adam Cole still, the Motor City Machine Guns, other TNA people that made me a fan. They weren't even there anymore. And then, New Japan. I mean, some of the best talent in the world right there, just overseas. Matt Hardy had the mind to go, we can't compete with that. Let's tear the playbook up. Let's rebuild it completely from the ground up, because there's no way we're going to get people talking when we're competing with that. But still, with his ideas for the broken universe, with cinematic wrestling matches, with really embracing the show part of a wrestling TV show, it became the hottest, or one of the hottest things in wrestling. It was a year earlier I was saying, wow, they're the new AWA, no one cares, to, hey, yeah, it isn't Omega and Okada, and yeah, it isn't AJ and Cena, and yeah, it isn't the Bullet Club Elite, but good lord, this is some smart stuff. Everybody was talking about Broken Matt Hardy. They were doing delete chants in Ring of Honor, at WWE shows, and it took the wrestling world by storm, and it basically pushed Impact through that dark period. Granted, it did not end on the best of terms, especially when they decided, hey, let's take this back to where, especially in their old age, they're going to make some real money. But the last, not counting as we speak with Impact, doing crossovers with AEW, the last time people were really talking about Impact, and talking about Impact in a positive light, was with Matt Hardy, with his broken universe that has now transcended 3 promotions. So, Matt Hardy is my final choice.
Gotcha.
So now comes the fun part. We collectively have agreed on 2 names: AJ Styles and Kurt Angle. Caleb and I agree on one other name.
That's Gail Kim.
And then we have a 4th spot open that is completely a free-for-all. So I asked, since Caleb and I both went with Gail, I asked you, Jedi. Can you sell us on Awesome Kong to make one of us change our vote? And try to say, is there any reason that you feel that Awesome Kong should go before Gail Kim, and maybe get one of us to change our mind, or to include Awesome Kong instead of Gail Kim on the as the number 3?
I gotta be honest, you guys presenting your case on Gail Kim pretty well already swung me to your side. I mean, I already, like I said, she was the one I thought of first, then I thought of who it seemed like drew more attention and excitement. But in the long run, I mean, Gail Kim was the force behind it all. And I mean, she was, twice, coming back. And yeah, I mean, I can't, there's no way I'm going to be able to argue my case on that. You guys pretty well convinced me. Gail Kim definitely is the face of the women's division in TNA.
Well, I'm glad to see we can do that. But now, the last time we did this, we all would plead our case to try and get someone to change their vote to one of ours for the 4th spot. And we could not do that with each other, so we left it up to the fans, to my followers, to vote. So, rather than us just, because I don't think any of us could fully convince someone else to change our vote to Samoa Joe, Abyss, or Matt Hardy. I feel we should, instead of trying to convince each other, let's try and convince our listeners. We will
Alrighty.
please campaign for your candidate here in this last little bit before we wrap everything up for this week's episode. And after this episode goes live to the public, I will be posting a poll on Twitter for our fans to vote on who should get the fourth space on the Mount Rushmore of TNA / Impact Wrestling. Should it be Samoa Joe? Should it be Abyss? Or should it be Matt Hardy? And, Jedi, you have a case for why Joe should be on above Abyss and Matt.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, all right. So, one, this is going to sound maybe a little cheap, but hey, go with my weakest point first. So, TNA did at one point release a video game that's still sitting on my shelf to this day, and Samoa Joe is one of the people on the cover of that video game, which tells you, especially at that time, how important he was to that company, because not just anybody gets on the cover. Moving on from that, when Kurt Angle first came in, part of the big buzz was he went right after Samoa Joe. So, at least at that time, if nothing else, in Kurt Angle's mind, the great Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe was the man to challenge, the man to beat. He didn't go after the world title immediately. He went after Samoa Joe.
Okay.
And, I mean, Samoa Joe he got the whole crowd worked up back then, and I mean, he just had the intensity, and I think he just brought something that at that time was not being offered in WWE. Like, the body shape was not a Greek god. He was more,
Right.
he looked on the overweight side and stuff, and yet, like, he would come in and you're like, well, he's going to wreck somebody, and it was almost like the Kimbo Slice of the MMA world at that point, I guess.
Right.
In a way, yeah, like not what you expected in all the ways, with the high flying and the intensity and everything. So that would be my best argument on why, and that was the platform where he really made his name, was in TNA. They benefited greatly from him.
Okay. Fair point. Fair point. Caleb, you have Abyss. Why do you feel Abyss should be chosen over Joe and Matt?
Well, first, I'd like to say that I think those are two great picks that you all have, and I do agree with Ela. Or am I allowed to? Shit, I said the shoot name.
Kayfabe.
Okay, Jim Cornette is
Jim
horrified.
Cornette's. He was horrified at me saying Broken Matt was worth it. He's already hopefully gone into like heart attack coma and lives. I'm not a heartless bastard. Like he's hopefully like in his like coma, like just going, goddamn motherfuckers, killing fucking business.
but anyways, I feel like Broken Matt Hardy did bring a lot of eyes back to the product, and I feel like Samoa Joe was a big part of TNA whenever it was kind of, I don't want to say at its peak, but at its prime.
Okay.
Every man needs his joke.
Right.
But when you think of Abyss, this is a guy that was in TNA from the very beginning, or close to the very beginning, to the very end of his wrestling career, and he put his body on the line so much for the entertainment of the TNA fans. Again, the Monsters Ball match, I know that was kind of named after him, and I know they did a lot of goofy stuff with Abyss, like kind of with Dr. Stevie and all that. But I mean, when you look at that, Abyss is just one of those guys where he can pull off just about any character. He can pull off a goofy character like that, or he can pull off a complete maniac character like he did in 2010 with the 10-10-10 gimmick and Janice. But I'm sticking with Abyss because of the loyalty thing.
Okay.
Mainly. And then just the punishment that put on his body.
Okay. All fair points. And I'm going to be the dirty politician here, and I'm going to start mudslinging. But I'm going to start mudslinging, and I do want to say before I start this mudslinging towards the other two, that Abyss and Samoa Joe are legends, and I respect the hell out of them, and everything that the other two guys have said are true. Samoa Joe is phenomenal. Samoa Joe was, for that time period, probably the hottest name in TNA. I remember in 2007, when Joe's contract was getting ready to come up, everybody going, all the TNA faithful, myself included, myself who thought, like Joe, but not worth standing in line for at this particular point in time. Please, God, please don't let him go to WWE. Please don't let him leave. TNA needs him. Please don't let that happen. And again, reference how much I ended up really becoming a fan of Samoa Joe, begging Jedi and his to take time away, and his girlfriend, wife, fiance, future wife, take their time away from being around each other so we could please go to St. Louis so I could meet Samoa Joe. I really need to meet Samoa Joe. So I don't say this to bash Samoa Joe. I don't say this to bash Abyss. Abyss is awesome. Everything you said, he was a loyal guy, and he does deserve all the credit in the world. My only real regret is, now that he's in WWE, it's only as a producer, and I wish we could have gotten a little bit in. I wish a mainstream stage could have eventually seen Abyss like they got to with AJ.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yes,
that's my only real. But everything he did for that company, the loyalty, that should be commended. And again, it was really truly go out of your way to find his Impact Hall of Fame induction speech. Just really how much TNA / Impact meant to Abyss.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I've got that out of the way, now I am going to be that person, and I'm going to have to mudsling a little bit for my candidate.
Oh, come on, man.
Here's how I'm mudslinging. Matt Hardy, with what his idea was in Impact, changed something that happened through his mind in this promotion, changed the wrestling business. You would not be seeing the, Elite Deletion or the Stadium Stampede or the Boneyard match or the Firefly Funhouse match. All the things that made that we kind of look to make COVID wrestling tolerable.
Mm-hmm.
That came from this man's mind that he started in this promotion. Abyss didn't change the wrestling business as a whole. Neither did Samoa Joe. At least in their time in Impact Wrestling. Matt Hardy did. The ripple effects of what Matt Hardy did in that promotion. Granted, I'll play the fault. He did have a horrible run at first where he was not in the best frame of mind and he was out of shape and at a low point in his life. Unlike Kurt Angle, his low point, he could not work as well.
Mm-hmm.
But when
that's really the only thing I held against agreeing with you on Matt Hardy was his first run.
But from there, it's like everything, this was the platform to change the wrestling business, and it was done with this guy. And, we're seeing that now. And until COVID is completely done, we're still going to be seeing that. That wouldn't have happened if it had not been for his run in Impact at that time. That's why I feel he deserves a spot over Joe and Abyss. If there were 6 faces on the Mount Rushmore,
oh man,
yeah, throw Joe and Abyss on there. But there's only 4. You can't. There's only Washington, Jefferson, Teddy, and Abe. They don't have a few more spaces on there for, John Kennedy or Obama or anybody else.
Oh, come on, man. I was pulling the Joe Biden there.
But you get what I'm saying, you know.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the Republicans don't get mad at me, so they don't have an extra spot on there for Ronald Reagan. Okay. I'll claim I'm a hater now. But that's what. But that's my case for Matt Hardy. So that is, we will leave this up. Everybody take a listen, and we will leave this in your hands. Who do you think should get the last spot on the TNA/Impact Wrestling Mount Rushmore? We have AJ Styles, Kurt Angle, and Gail Kim set in stone. Jedi says Samoa Joe. Caleb says Abyss. I say Matt Hardy. Or, well, just like in a regular election, you can have a write-in candidate, and you can. We'll have an option for other, and just tweet at me your other choice, and hey, maybe you can come up with someone, and more people can come up with have the same idea as y'all, and you can outvote all three of us. So
I'm gonna write in Relic. I'm gonna write in Relic on my burner account.
Hey, that's killer spelled backwards. Black Rain.
Black Rain.
Let's not talk about Black Rain.
Let's not. I'm glad Dustin's doing significantly better, but
absolutely.
Yeah, so that is it for us this week. We appreciate everybody tuning into the podcast, and we weren't. A lot of us were on the same page, but we definitely did not have the same four, which is what I was terrified of before. Like, well,
we were almost there.
Almost there, but like I was really terrified with. Well, we all agree on everything, so it's a 5-minute podcast. So long, everybody. But appreciate everyone for tuning in. Caleb, I know you have a podcast and you have social media to plug. If you'd like to talk about that right now.
Yeah. So my podcast is Four Sides Podcast. I talk mostly about independent wrestling. I bring on independent wrestling stars to guest star on my show. You can find me on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Four Sides IV. I'm on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and all your other select podcast platforms. If you go to my Twitter, there's actually a link tree in the description. So if you want to grab that link tree, you'll have access to all my social medias.
Okay. No, Jedi has no social media because, much like Heath Slater, he's got kids. He ain't got time for that shit. He barely has time for this. I'm gonna get an angry text message from him. What's that?
I said I'm open to donations. I'll take cash. I'll take.
Yeah.
This is my Cash App.
Yeah, put your Cash App out there. But yeah, you don't have time for that. But if you do have a question for Jedi, hit me up on my social media pages. I will forward the question to Jedi. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share, subscribe for more content, not just from the world of pro wrestling, but from the world of comic books, gaming, anime, and all things geek culture. And you can follow me on my social media pages, facebook.com/athleticgeek89, Twitter athletic_geek89, Instagram athleticgeek89, and speaking of Cash Apps, if you would like to help improve this channel financially, I am on Patreon. Hit me up there, patreon.com/athleticgeek89. Definitely check out Caleb on the Four Sides podcast. Check out listen to stories of some of the great talent that he's had on his podcast. Check out our weekly live streams, the Just Us Marks Wrestling Recap Show. We stream every week talking about the week in wrestling, and check out the other geek culture type videos that are on this channel. So for Jedi Jason Kruger and Caleb Carr, I am the Athletic Geek, and we will see you next time.